Okay, welcome to the 30th Path of Resh. This is an introduction. And so the purpose of this is to begin to present the concepts and the ideas and the symbols of the 30th path so that you can just prepare for the path working that we're going to do next week. And we're going to just allow these images to flood your mind. And try to be in a relaxed state, contemplative, meditative, and don't try to grab onto anything with your conscious mind. Be light with the mind state, mildly meditative. And just let yourself receive the concepts. Let your subconscious and your unconscious be the ones that catch them rather than the conscious mind. Just let it go and filter through. And keep your journal nearby. And if you get any tangible images or you start to see an event that opens up in your mind's eye, you see these things happen, you notice emotional responses, then take note as you are taking these images in. That will help you to digest the ideas. So this is what we have been doing. Here's the Tree of Life. This path is called the collective intelligence, and it's ruled by the sun. It goes from Yesod, the 9th path, to Hod, the 8th path. So Yesod is referred to as the machinery of the universe, the treasure house of images, and it's associated with dreams and intuition in the moon. And we've already done the working of this, and we're moving in a direction that we haven't done the working of towards the 8th Sephirah of Hod, which is absolute, perfect intelligence. The logical mind, the waking consciousness, and Mercury. What?
The planet Mercury.
The planet Mercury. Right. So we have the moon and the sun and then Mercury, and that's where we end. We have already done Malkuth, the ground, right? And we did the 31st path going from Malkuth to Yod, where we began the process of integrating. The 32nd path is where we made contact with our shadow from Malkuth to Yesod. The 31st path is when we began the process of integrating what we found with our conscious realization. Boom, boom. And now we're integrating our spiritual life into the worldly domain. Boom, boom. Also of note, I want to point out the relationship of our destination Hod, where we're going, to Hesed. And Hesed is the Sephirah of mercy, and it's often balanced with Gabora. This is mercy and justice, glory and power, and benevolent love. And you see that it's blue. This is the color that we use when we do all of our imagery. And the affirmation is, my thoughts are focused on the awareness of God. Do you have anything to add to that?
When we do the Kabbalistic cross, depending on how you do it, Hesed is of course on the left, and Gebura is on the right. We balance between these 2 points. So those are those 2 balance points. When we do the Kabbalistic cross, we reinforce that constantly.
Ata Malkuth. Vegadula.
Gebura.
There you go.
Olam. Amen. So we're balancing and charging ourselves up within the tree itself.
Yeah. Okay, so this comes out of the book Magical Kabbalah by Frater Barabbas. We highly recommend this. And his description of the book is, of the path is, the 30th path is a path through which great wisdom can be attained, because the Sephirah Hod is the means through which one may contact the illumined masters of spiritual evolution. These are the great teachers who are eternally employed with the guiding and teaching of humanity, and whose main sphere of influence is ultimately found in Hesed. That was why we went over Hesed. Because there is a powerful link between Hesed and Hod through Tiphareth, the teachings from these high spiritual sources are projected down to the planes to form a pool of instruction, as it were, in Hod. It's typically referred to as the water temple because of its symbolic use as a pool in which higher wisdom may be seen as reflected light. Because of the influence of the moon in Yesod and the Mercury in Hod, the combination of these two Sephiroth in this pathway produce the source of great occult wisdom, which confers complete freedom and joy in those who have received and realized its gifts. Such a confluence of occult knowledge and wisdom is like the bright light of the sun, the solar logos, which illumines everything near and far, and the archangels of the path are Gabriel, who is specific to Yesod, and Michael, who is specific to Hod, and the tarot trump is the sun. So you get a guide. If you have not already received one, then perhaps this is something that you can look forward to. One of the gifts of this path, there are several.
Is the first sometimes the name of your holy guardian angel?
That's the last slide. That's okay. Yeah, you can. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
So we're bringing. Maybe I should wait until we get.
Okay. All right. So here's Gabrielle on the. I don't know if it's your left or right. On this side, this is Gabrielle, and this is Michael. And these are images that I took. This is Gabrielle appears as the angel in the book of Daniel and the book of Enoch. So they have a lot of biblical presence. And this is a painting by Francisco de Goya from the late 1800s. And the Michael is by Guido Rini, and that was done in the first half of the 1600s. And so these are some of the spiritual guides that you may encounter as symbols or archetypes or patterns that you recognize. These are how the angels appeared to these people in the 1600s, and even into the 1800s, they were still kind of looking the same way. Gabriel always seems to have his neck jutted forward in that particular way. I don't know why, but that seems to be a reference to him. He's in this constant prayer sort of posture. And Michael has a sword. In fact, I love Michael. I named my child after Michael. Michael's my friend. It was probably Michael who was sitting next to me in the jeans with the short, all-American brown haircut. He likes to hang out with me from time to time in various ways. Never appears like this to me. In fact, when I told Eric about my visions of Michael, he was like, that can't be Michael. And I was like, I'm telling you, it's what he says he is. So however you see these things might appear to you in a variety of different ways according to your culture or your predisposition, or, they use symbols that work for you. But since I like Michael, I thought I'd shower you with Michael images, because don't you love Michael too? Up here in the top corner, we have Michael slaying the demon Satan, Lucifer. This is from the St. Michaelis Church in Hamburg. This is a 9th century mural from Makuria, which is now in Sudan, which is now considered Sudan and southern Egypt. This is the Castle St. Angelo in Rome. This is a 10th century gold relief of St. Michael's in St. Michael's Basilica. And this is an image in the Abbey Bibliotheca in Austria. I got these images off of Wikipedia. and he is weighing the stone during judgment. So not only is he has a sword, and the sword is very important, and the sword is blue. It's full of blue light. And he is constantly vigilant in his effort for things that are obstacles or barriers to our spiritual progress. The word Satan means adversary, and it wasn't personified until later in history. So the way that I see this is that Michael helps us with our kunda buffers and our blockages and the things that we have to work on. And we can see that this is a really super cool image. And then there's also some kind of component that comes in judgment. In the Coptic and Orthodox traditions, it's more like you see the staff, or sometimes you see a book. He's more academic, more learning oriented than warrior oriented.
And when we do our ritual, the Pele ring that we sanctify and put on was given to John Dee by Michael. Michael held his flaming sword out over their table of practice, basically their main altar that was stacked with all kinds of holy objects. And his flaming sword was there, and the Pele ring fell out of his sword onto the table. And he declared to them that it was basically the ring of Solomon of legend. And so that's where that ring comes from. It has a direct tie back to Michael and his sword of dispelling illusion and obstacles.
Whoa, this is it.
Lo, this is it. It's angels dreamt of. So that's where that comes from.
Michael, I love him. Okay, here's the sun card from Aleister Crowley's Thoth deck. We have the two naked cherubim, and the breast and the back, dancing in the circle of the zodiac. And the tarot interpretation that comes from Frater Anubis's grimoire, that came out of Frater Barabbas's grimoire.
And a few other sources, yeah.
That is the recognized version of interpretation for us, for the ESSG, is confidence and energy, acceptance of the sun totally, success, joy in the simple life, freedom from worry, achievement, and the power of synergy. Solutions
And success. And when you see the sun card come up, you know that things are going to work out and flow and mesh, and that things are going to be really good. It's very positive card.
And it's number 19, so it appears really towards the later end of the major arcana. So there's a lot of work that is done prior to getting to this point. This is really the end result. This is the fruition of the whole process. And we see that reflected in our next slide. So let me show you that. All right. So this is an excerpt from Frater Barabbas's manuscript, The Magician's Tarot. This is unpublished manuscript. It is one of our inner order secret teachings that only diligent people who make it halfway into Zoom YouTube videos get to have as a reward. And he talks about the sun on the hero's path. So this is where we get this really fascinating chunk of mythos from Frater Barabbas. It's just really brilliant, good, juicy, chewy, gritty stuff. And he talks about the 22 cycles of the path of initiation. And part one is the separation and departure, right? So this is Joseph Campbell's hero's journey. And so the first thing is you leave. So there's a calling and you leave. And then you have the trials and the victories, and those are the initiatory processes. And then you have this cosmogonic cycle, which still remains a mystery. And then you come back, you take what you've found, what you've learned, what you've discovered, you bring it back, and you reintegrate with society from there, right? So it's not about just going and having those gifts and then never doing anything with them. It's about, you can't really complete the cycle until you return and reintegrate. And so he calls this the final step. This is the freedom to live, the ultimate boon. The seeker who has resigned their personal will and gained the mediation of the absolute spirit and receives the blessing of knowledge and the certainty of perfected faith. As an instrument of the divine, that's where the will goes. It goes to the divine. The seeker has been released from the bondage of all social and psychological restrictions and limitations and is completely liberated. There are no restrictions imposed on an individual who can easily travel between inner and outer worlds, for what is not possible in one world is possible in another. The power of selfless actions and unworldly concerns are the domain of the enlightened seeker. They are powerful in insight and unencumbered in action, and represent a pure spiritual archetype manifested in the human body. This is the nature of the spiritual master, as well as the incarnated avatar. The quality of eternal renewal has as its essential nature that which never truly dies. It only changes its outer appearance and remains inviolable in eternal manifestation. So, wow, how cool is that? You know, this is really the path of self-actualization. When you give up your will, you don't give up any part of yourself that you want to keep. You don't give up any part of yourself that you love. You only give up the parts of yourself that are not helpful. And you're always offered with choice. You always have that choice.
One of the most beautiful things about some of Frater Barabbas's teachings, and it's the first time I've ever saw it sort of put together, is that there are 22 stages of the hero's journey for Joseph Campbell, Hero with 1,000 Faces, and 22 major arcana, which represent initiations. Two separate things that never met, never passed in the hallway. It's the same number, and they line up flawlessly. Those are the sorts of synchronicities that we look for as magicians, where things parallel and we can step from one world to the other, and they enhance and explain each other. So this is something really worthy of attention.
So Frater Barabbas quotes from Joseph Campbell and the Hero with 1,000 Faces that the cosmogonic cycle is to be understood as the passage of the universal consciousness from the deep sleep zone of the unmanifest through dreams to the full day of awakening, then back again through dream to the timeless dark, as in the actual experience of every living being, so in the grandiose figure of the living cosmos. In the abyss of sleep, the energies are refreshed. In the work of the day, they are exhausted. The life of the universe runs down and must be renewed. The cosmogonic cycle pulses forth into manifestation and back into non-manifestation, amidst a silence of the unknown. The Hindus represent the mystery in the symbol Om. Here, the sound A represents the waking consciousness, U, the dream, and M, deep sleep. The silence surrounding the symbol is the unknown. It is simply called the fourth. The symbol itself is God as creator, preserver, and destroyer. But silence is God eternal and absolutely uninvolved in all the openings and closings of the world. All right, so the following pieces of information are from Daniel Muller's Shamanic Kabbalah book. And we saw Daniel Muller when we went to Mystic South, and I got his book, and it's really cool because I knew I'd be doing pathworking, and I pulled it out. Uh-oh, sorry about that. I was trying to move the image. There we go. Jeez. Okay, here we go. Thanks. He combines shamanism with Kabbalism, and I guess he learned shamanism in Peru.
In Peru, yes.
He and his wife went and lived there for a few years and did an apprenticeship. So that was his training. And I think there's some really interesting points that he makes in his book. So when that comes up and we're doing our working, I think what he brings into the story today is really interesting. So what he says is, after working the 32nd and the 31st path, you should have a very clear idea of what's not working for you. You should know very clearly what's not working. And so also you should begin to be thinking about how you want to take on this task of the great work. And he brings into focus the dynamic of having a daily spiritual practice. And so the energies of this path are really well suited for helping people who are either wanting to get a daily practice or to kind of up their game a little bit. You know, I'm constantly in an ebb and flow with my practice. There are some days where it is very short or maybe non-existent, and there are some days where I spend hours doing my daily practice. And there are times when I'm very good at maintaining a consistent practice consistently for days on end over months and years, and there are times when I'm not able to do that. That's all irrelevant. It's not important what the dynamic of the ebb and flow of your practice is. What's most important is that it's a value for you to have one in your life, and that you're moving in the direction of trying to cultivate that aspect of you that was mentioned in the previous slide, right? That aspect of you that is going to be in alignment, in and of divine will. And that's only going to come through a spiritual practice. It's not going to come by wishing. It's not going to come by feeling or intuition or the clothing that we wear or who we associate with or what books we read or what traditions we, identify with or what, that none of that really gets us to where we want to go. It's just, you can't get any higher than this path than probably the path of the sphere of Hud without having a practice. There's nothing more important than that. And it's worth kind of really ringing the bell loudly, because we all need a little bit of motivation to get it going. The motivation is something, and so as with the ritual that we attended last night, the directive was to do whatever you want to do. You can do whatever you want to do, and we will teach you pieces of the process along the way. So he makes another really interesting point, that the concept of limitation, by the consecration of boundaries, that we can develop and understand a place in the world. And that by the setting of these external boundaries and really understanding what our own personal limitations are, that we can, once we know that, then we can use that. That becomes valuable to us. That becomes extremely valuable. that the space inside is defined. 30 spokes create a wheel. It is the space inside that makes it useful. So it's the limitations that really help us to grow. And so a unification, this is another point that he makes, that when we can unify the dualities that exist within ourselves of limitations and growth, that we can actually achieve the harmony of true singularity, defined as nirvana, moksha, union with the source, however you want to define it. So we often don't really like limitations, but when we will allow ourselves to see the reality of, for example, how we live in a world that's made up of space and time, and that gives us a perception of reality. And if we didn't have space and time, then we wouldn't, well, I don't know. I think that we might be able to go past that. Let's see what happens if we went past that limitation. So we have put quite a bit of thought into thinking about what our limitations are. Now we need our guide to help us to realize in our conscious minds how we can overcome them and move past them and get to that other place. I guess that would be whatever path comes next. Anything?
So we have been on a path where we have gone deep into the subconscious and become more conscious, more aware of the things that we find there. And so now, as the hero, we're stepping out of the underworld into the light for a moment and taking, I don't want to say a rest, but we're reevaluating and coming up with how we're going to live our lives in the world with the knowledge that we've gained through our journey through the underworld. If you notice in my ritual, for those of you who are there, it's the gate structure, which is very simple and extremely powerful. We encounter the guide, the guardian, and the obstacle, or the ordeal. We go down into the underworld, and we have to find the boon, and we come back out, which is where we are in our path working. We have been to the underworld, and now we're coming back out and to the daylight, having been victorious, and we have to figure out how we're going to apply what the boon is, the information, the initiation that we've gained to our daily lives.
So this is Resh. We've talked about it quite a bit. It's called the seed of human intelligence, the sacred enclosure of the brain. It is considered a double letter. It means head. I'd like to remind you that while it says the sacred enclosure of the brain, yeah, I changed it to brain. It originally said mind. So there's a difference between brain and mind, and the front of the cranium is where you find the brain, but the mind is not local to the organ of the brain. It is not local to the cellular structure. It is non-localized. So I don't know how that fits in, but I wanted to draw a distinction there at this point. Its metal is gold and sulfur and shiny things. And its color is any color from yellow to red, and anything that's dazzling or bright or sparkly or disco ballish or miragey or not opalescent, that would be lunar. And its perfume is cinnamon, olivabunum, and mastic. And so, yeah, you want to show them. There's the mastic, and here's the olivabunum, which we purchased on Amazon, and cinnamon. And so if you don't want to go online and buy incenses for our upcoming ritual, these are rare too. I don't think you can just go to the local stone shop and get these. You could take cinnamon and burn it and let it, and kind of use that as a sage stick and see how that works. Or try putting little broken up pieces of cinnamon on charcoal if you have charcoal. And the lion and the sparrowhawk are the animals, and the plants. So the rose. The rose is particularly symbolic because it has a lot of alchemical references to transformation and perfection and coming into fruition. And so the rose is very, very important flower. The rose is considered to be the highest evolution of the plant kingdom, is my understanding. And the sunflower, of course, the heliotrope, plants that follow the sun. And the laurel, the reason the laurel is associated with this path is because Apollo's crown, Apollo the sun god, he had a crown of laurel. And the jewel is the chrysoleth. Okay. Okay.
Okay, so why are we looking at a Hebrew letter? It's worth mentioning here for those of us who haven't read a lot of Tarot. There are 22 letters in the Hebrew alphabet. There are 22 paths on the Kabbalistic Tree of Life. There are 22 Tarot trumps. It's not a coincidence. It's by design. Since the Kabbalah is sacred and a map of the universe and of consciousness, the 22 letters of Hebrew are sacred. And a lot of this information is coming out of a very old book, very slim, called Sefer Yetzirah. Yetzirah is one of the four Kabbalistic worlds, the world of air, world of talking and thinking and writing things down. There are four Kabbalistic worlds. So all of this fits together like a beautiful, amazing stained glass window or jigsaw puzzle. So that's why you're looking at a Hebrew letter and a Tarot trump and one of Joseph Campbell's paths of the hero, one of those stages. So that's why this is here. So Resh is considered the head or the front of the head. Sometimes it's also listed as the face, but in particular, it's the front of the brain itself, the prefrontal cortex, where we do our thinking, the thing that makes us human, which is filled with neurons that allow us to concentrate. They are actually blocking neurons that allow us to slow down and focus on one thing. So that's really important to consider because in the future, we'll be encountering cough. A cough is the ear or the back of the head where the more primitive parts of the brain are that control instinctual functions. Here, we're talking about the more thinky parts that are up at the front of the head.
Thinky parts.
And I like to remember Resh because it kind of looks like Elvis's hair, because you have like this big, beautiful pompadour, woo, down the back like that. And, and Elvis was the king. So that's one of the ways I remember what Resh looks like. And I think that might be in a Chicken Kabbalah as well, which is another book worth reading.
Chrysoleth. This is Chrysoleth. Just thought I'd show you. It drives away evil spirits and madness. It's the stone of hope. It's very helpful for depression. Very helpful for grief. Looks like a mullet.
Yeah,
it looks like a mullet. Chrysoleth, incidentally, was one of the stones from the book of Exodus that was in the breastplate of Aaron that he used in some sort of magical way.
Yeah, the high priest of ancient Hebrew had this beautiful gold breastplate that had 12 stones in it, representing all things 12, right? 12 tribes, 12 signs of the zodiac. And when you would make a prayer, it would light up in a specific sequence. and you were required to touch the stones in that sequence, like a Simon Says type thing.
Mm. So, and it's also listed in Revelation. It will be the New Jerusalem. So there's some interesting, I went and looked this up. This was really interesting. Basically the walls, the ground is like glass and the walls are made out of layers of all 12 of those jewels, with this being one of the layers. And there's it is a town, it is a city that is illuminated, but not by the sun or by the moon. And it is a constant source of illumination. There's no day and no night. So I found that to be quite interesting, because there are cities like that that are being developed right now. So, in the middle of the desert. All right, we're getting near the end here. I need to hold it. No. Okay. This is it. So, in summary, the 30th path is called the collecting intelligence, and all forms of consciousness are collected, integrated, and appropriated for a divine purpose. The laws which govern the perception of our reality are formed here. The precise structure and operation of cosmic law that rules and regulates everything is here, the universe and everything. And we get an evolutionary increase in cosmic and eternal consciousness, which will benefit us in a sense of regeneration and renewal and mind-body balance. We will be able to begin communicating or enhanced communication with the illumined masters or the inner plane masters. We become aware of the beams of the sunlight of knowledge that guides our path. Continued moving out of the subconscious into the conscious and becoming aware of aspects of yourself that you haven't been able to see, which ultimately results in moving out of these impulsive, reactionary ways of living into something that's more organized, more ordered, and more thought out. So here we see science as well as science fiction, astrology, alchemy, and dragons. The affirmation is, my thoughts are focused on the awareness of God, and the path emblem is the layman with the hexagram, the unification of the upward and downward moving forces. And now would be a really good time to talk to them about the Holy Guardian Angel name.
Yes. So the purpose of the inner work that we do is to approach the Holy Guardian Angel, or the Atman, or the soul self, or whatever. It is the highest and best version of you, the eternal you that's in direct connection and meditation with the source of all things. So on this path, it's possible that you may get the first glimpse and perhaps know the name of your holy guardian angel. It's possible. Which is eventually you want to have full knowledge and conversation, get to know the best you. But this is where we are beginning to have that awareness open up. Which incidentally, when we start looking at the rituals that we've learned and we start customizing them, a lot of that information may come from your holy guardian angel as a way to approach it. Something to consider. It's rarely mentioned, but it will help you. As you take one step forward, it takes 1,000 steps towards you.
And on that note, the final slide are some images from Apollo, our series of space missions, going out to the moon, going out into space. And thank you very much for attending.